that explains how changing the way we think can change the way we experience life. The book shows that our thoughts have much more influence over our lives than we usually realize. The way we think can affect our career, our relationships, our confidence, our decisions, and even the way we respond to difficult situations. This book is for anyone who feels that they want to improve their life and become a better version of themselves. Whether you want to make progress in your career, build stronger relationships, become more confident, or simply develop a healthier mindset, the ideas in this book can give you a useful direction. Hello friends, welcome to Book Insider. Today, we are going to talk about the book Think Straight, written by Darius Foroux. So, let's begin with the first and one of the most important ideas from the book, the power of your thoughts. Point 1. The power of your thoughts. Your thoughts have an incredible amount of influence over your life. They don't just affect your mood or emotions, they also influence the decisions you make, the actions you take, the opportunities you notice, and ultimately the reality you experience. In other words, the way you think can change the way you live. The book explains that our thoughts shape our reality in two important ways. The first way is through something known as neuroplasticity. Our brain is not a completely fixed system. It is constantly adapting and changing according to the information we receive and the experiences we repeatedly go through. Every time you repeatedly think about something, your brain becomes more familiar with that particular pattern of thinking. For example, imagine that you constantly tell yourself, "I'm going to fail." You repeat this thought every time you face a challenge. Eventually, this negative expectation can become a familiar mental pattern. Instead of looking for possible solutions, you may automatically focus on everything that could go wrong. Your brain begins to operate according to the patterns you repeatedly give it. On the other hand, if you regularly train yourself to think in a more constructive way, your brain can gradually develop different patterns. This doesn't mean that simply thinking positively will magically make every problem disappear. Rather, your thoughts influence the way you approach problems, and that approach can affect the actions you take. The second way our thoughts shape our reality is by influencing our actions. Think about it this way. If you strongly believe that you are capable of achieving something, you are much more likely to make an effort. You may try different strategies, learn from your mistakes, and continue even after experiencing failure. But if you convince yourself that something is impossible before you even start, you are far less likely to take action. You might avoid the opportunity completely because you have already decided in your mind that you will fail. This is why your beliefs matter so much. The book gives examples of people who were able to overcome extremely difficult situations because of the way they thought about themselves and their circumstances. One example describes a person who fought against cancer while repeatedly reminding himself that he was bigger and stronger than the disease. Another example is of a person who achieved success in business because he developed the belief that he was unstoppable. The main lesson here is that your thoughts do not simply stay inside your head. They influence your emotions. Your emotions influence your behavior. And your behavior eventually contributes to the results you get in life. That's why learning to manage your thinking can be such a powerful form of personal development. Point 2. Recognizing your limiting beliefs. Now let's talk about something that often prevents people from reaching their full potential. Limiting beliefs. Sometimes, the biggest obstacle in our lives isn't another person, a difficult situation, or a lack of opportunity. Sometimes, it is the way we think about ourselves. Limiting beliefs are deeply rooted ideas that make us believe that we are capable of certain things, but incapable of others. For example, someone might believe that they are not intelligent enough to learn a difficult subject. Another person might believe that they are not confident enough to start a business. Someone else may think that they are simply unlucky and that success is meant for other people. These beliefs can become so familiar that we stop questioning them. We treat them as facts, even though they may simply be assumptions we have repeated for years. So let me ask you a few questions. Do you often say things like, "I can't do this," "This is too difficult for me," or "I'm just not good at it"? Do you frequently worry about failure and avoid taking risks because you are afraid of making mistakes? Do you criticize yourself whenever something doesn't go according to plan? Do you sometimes achieve something important but immediately minimize it or convince yourself that it wasn't a big deal? Do you constantly compare yourself with other people and feel that you are not good enough? If you answered yes to any of these questions, you may have some limiting beliefs that need to be examined. The good news is that these beliefs are not necessarily permanent. You can learn to identify them, question them, and gradually replace them with healthier ways of thinking. The book suggests several practical strategies for doing this. The first strategy is to challenge your thoughts. Whenever a negative thought appears, don't immediately accept it as the truth. Stop and ask yourself, is this actually true? Then ask, what evidence do I have that proves this thought? For example, if you tell yourself, "I always fail," look at your past honestly. Did you really fail at everything? Probably not. You may have failed at certain things, but you have also succeeded at others. The problem is that our minds sometimes focus heavily on negative experiences and ignore evidence that doesn't fit our negative beliefs. By questioning these thoughts, you can start seeing them more objectively. The second strategy is to treat yourself with kindness. Many people speak to themselves in a way they would never speak to another person. Imagine your close friend makes a mistake. You probably wouldn't immediately tell them that they are worthless or incapable of doing anything. Instead, you would probably encourage them, explain that mistakes happen, and remind them that they can improve. You should try to offer yourself the same level of understanding. Instead of constantly attacking yourself for your mistakes, learn from them and move forward. The third strategy is to use positive affirmations. This means intentionally reminding yourself of your strengths and abilities. You can tell yourself that you are capable of learning, improving, adapting, and handling difficult situations. The purpose isn't to repeat unrealistic statements and pretend that everything is perfect. The purpose is to gradually replace automatic negative thinking with more balanced and empowering thoughts. Another useful strategy is to set small goals and complete them. You don't have to completely transform your life overnight. Start with small targets that you can realistically achieve. When you complete one small goal, you create evidence that you are capable of taking action and following through. These small successes can gradually strengthen your confidence, and as your confidence grows, you become more willing to pursue larger and more ambitious goals. Point 3. The science of neuroplasticity. Now let's move to another important concept discussed in the book: neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to change, adapt, and reorganize itself based on our thoughts, behaviors, learning, and experiences. The important thing to understand is that your brain isn't completely fixed. It continues to change throughout your life. This means that you are not permanently stuck with the way you currently think. You can learn new things. You can develop new habits. You can break old patterns. And you can even change the way you approach problems and situations. In simple terms, your brain can be trained. One of the best ways to encourage this process is by learning new skills. It doesn't matter whether you are young or old. Learning something unfamiliar forces your brain to create new connections and strengthen existing ones. It could be learning a new language, playing a musical instrument, learning a professional skill, reading about a new subject, or starting a completely new hobby. Every time you challenge yourself to understand something unfamiliar, your brain has to adapt. Another important step is to change the way you think. Your repeated thoughts can influence the patterns inside your brain. If your mind is constantly filled with negative thoughts, fear, and unnecessary worry, those patterns can become increasingly familiar. But when you begin replacing destructive thoughts with more constructive ones, you can gradually develop a different mental perspective. This can help reduce unnecessary tension, manage worry, and create a more positive approach to everyday challenges. The next step is building new habits. Breaking an old habit isn't always easy. If you have been doing something for years, your brain may automatically return to the familiar behavior. But that doesn't mean change is impossible. When you repeatedly practice a new behavior, you give your brain the opportunity to create and strengthen new neural pathways. The more consistently you practice, the more natural the new behavior can eventually become. That's why consistency is often more important than trying to make a huge change in one day. You should also regularly challenge your brain. Doing the same things every day can make life comfortable, but your brain also benefits from new experiences. Try solving puzzles, visit a new place, read about subjects you normally don't explore, learn a new skill. Try doing something differently from your usual routine. These activities provide your brain with fresh information and encourage it to adapt. The overall message is simple. Your brain has the ability to change, and your repeated thoughts, actions, and experiences play an important role in that process. Point 4. Developing self-awareness. The next major step toward personal improvement is developing self-awareness. Before you can change your thoughts and behaviors, you first need to recognize what is happening inside your mind. Self-awareness means becoming more conscious of your thoughts, emotions, reactions, and habits. It means taking a moment to ask yourself, what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling? And why am I reacting this way? The important part is to observe these thoughts without immediately judging them as good or bad. You don't have to fight every negative thought. Instead, learn to notice it. This is what we can call neutral observation. For example, if you suddenly feel angry, instead of immediately reacting, take a moment and notice the emotion. You can tell yourself, I'm feeling angry right now. Now, let's move on to another important idea from the book, practicing gratitude and using visualization. One of the easiest ways to improve the way you think is to start paying more attention to the good things that already exist in your life. According to the book, gratitude can gradually change the direction of your thoughts. When you regularly focus on what you already have, instead of constantly thinking about what is missing, your mind starts developing a more positive outlook. This can eventually improve your happiness, satisfaction, and overall experience of life. A simple way to practice gratitude is to write down the things you are thankful for every day. They don't have to be huge achievements or extraordinary events. Even the smallest things can be included. Maybe you had a peaceful morning, someone helped you when you needed it, you enjoyed a good meal, or you simply had a productive day. The important thing is to consciously notice these things. When you make this a regular habit, you train your mind to search for positive experiences instead of automatically focusing on problems. Another useful practice is to notice moments of gratitude throughout the day. For example, you might see a beautiful sunset and stop for a few seconds to appreciate it. You might enjoy a good conversation with someone you care about. Or you might simply remind yourself that you are alive, healthy, and capable of experiencing another day. These moments may look insignificant, but consciously appreciating them can change your emotional state and help you develop a more positive attitude toward your life. You should also express your gratitude to other people. Whenever someone does something kind for you, take a moment to thank them. It may seem like a very simple action, but expressing appreciation can have a powerful effect on relationships. People want to feel valued, and when you genuinely recognize someone's effort, you create a stronger emotional connection with them. So gratitude is not only about improving your own mindset, it can also make your relationships healthier and more meaningful. The book then introduces another powerful technique called visualization. Visualization means creating a mental picture of the future you want to experience. It can be used to clarify your goals, strengthen your motivation, and help you imagine what success could actually look and feel like. To practice visualization, close your eyes and imagine that you have already achieved one of your major goals. Do not make the image vague. Try to imagine the situation in as much detail as possible. Where are you? What are you doing? Who is around you? What does your environment look like? And most importantly, how do you feel? For example, if your goal is to build a successful business, imagine yourself actually running that business. Think about the place where you work, the people you work with, the kind of results you are getting, and the lifestyle you have created. The more clearly you can imagine the situation, the easier it can become to emotionally connect with the goal. But there is another important part of visualization: emotions. Don't only imagine the external result. Pay attention to the emotions you would experience after achieving it. Maybe you would feel proud of yourself. Maybe you would feel excited, peaceful, confident, or satisfied. Allow yourself to experience those emotions mentally. These positive emotions can become a source of motivation when things become difficult. However, visualization should never become an excuse for avoiding real action. Imagining your desired future is only the first step. You must eventually turn that vision into practical action. Once you have a clear picture of what you want, start asking yourself what needs to happen to make it real. What skills do you need to develop? What habits do you need to change? What steps can you take today? Use the image of your desired future as a direction, and then create a realistic plan to move toward it. Now let's come to another major idea discussed in the book: goal setting and achievement. If you want to turn your dreams into reality, simply wishing for them is not enough. You need clear goals. You need to prepare yourself for obstacles. And you need a system that helps you stay motivated when progress becomes slow. Let's understand these three areas one by one. First is setting clear goals. And before we continue, if you are enjoying our book summaries, don't forget to subscribe to Book Insider. And friends, if you enjoy our videos and want to support the channel, you can also consider becoming a member. Now, coming back to goal setting, one of the most useful principles is the SMART principle. According to this approach, a good goal should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. In simple words, your goal should clearly tell you what you want to accomplish, how you will measure your progress, whether it is realistically achievable, why it matters to you, and when you want to accomplish it. There is also an important difference between a desire and an actual goal. A desire is usually unclear. For example, saying, "I want to become fit," sounds positive, but it does not give you a specific target. What does fit mean? How much weight do you want to lose? By when? What exactly are you going to do? Now compare that with saying, "I will lose 5 kilograms within the next 3 months by exercising regularly and improving my diet." That is much clearer. You know exactly what you want, how much you want to achieve, and the deadline you are working toward. Another useful strategy is to write your goals down. Don't simply keep important goals inside your mind. Write them on paper, in a notebook, or somewhere you can easily see them. When your goals are visible, you are more likely to remember them and stay focused on the actions required to achieve them. Now let's talk about overcoming obstacles. No matter how carefully you plan, challenges will eventually appear. Instead of assuming everything will go perfectly, think ahead and identify the problems that could potentially stop you. Ask yourself, what could go wrong? What might make me lose motivation? What could delay my progress? And what can I do if that happens? Once you identify possible obstacles, create a practical action plan for dealing with them. For example, if lack of time is likely to become a problem, decide beforehand when you will work on your goal. If money could become an obstacle, look for alternative solutions. If you lose motivation easily, create a system that keeps you accountable. The idea is to prepare yourself before the problem arrives. At the same time, you need to remain flexible. Life does not always follow the plan we create. Sometimes circumstances change, unexpected problems appear, or your original strategy simply doesn't work. When that happens, don't immediately assume that your goal is impossible. Instead, adjust your approach. Change the plan if necessary, but continue moving toward the bigger objective. And finally, you need to stay motivated. Big goals can take weeks, months, or even years to accomplish. That is why you should learn to appreciate small victories along the way. If you complete one small step, recognize that progress. If you develop a new habit, acknowledge it. If you overcome a problem that previously stopped you, give yourself credit. These small wins can provide the motivation you need to continue. Another important factor is maintaining positive thinking. Avoid constantly telling yourself that you are going to fail. Instead, remind yourself that improvement takes time and that you are capable of learning from your mistakes. Your mindset can influence how long you continue when things become difficult. It is also helpful to spend time around people who motivate and inspire you. The people around you can influence your thinking, your habits, and even your confidence. Try to build a supportive environment where people encourage each other, share useful ideas, and push one another toward growth. When you combine clear goals, preparation, flexibility, positive thinking, and a supportive environment, you greatly increase your chances of turning your plans into real results.